ChicagoLand SharePoint users group. Welcome to our first attempt at a virtual session in an attempt to address the challenges that some people have with logistics of getting downtown for a face-to-face, or even us getting out into the suburbs since we're quite distributed. The first couple of minutes here are going to be people getting logged on, so we're going to begin the actual presentations and the session around 11:35. That gives us about 4 minutes. Everyone is on mute mode initially to try to reduce the bandwidth that's consumed in this kind of a session, but at regular intervals feel free to use the chat mechanism that's available to ask questions or to make comments when I open up the floor for discussions. So everybody sit tight and we'll get started in about 3 more minutes. To attend this virtual session, please let me know if you're having problems seeing the shared screen with the slide decks in it. Otherwise, I'll proceed. The chat tool is available to you to chat to me and to our staff that are on board. We've got myself, Mark Vogt, the chair. We've got Chris Barton, Edie Burrell, Elizabeth Feldman, and Erica Archer also assisting with today's broadcast. Feel free to reach out to any of them via chat if you're having problems. Otherwise, let's just jump right in. Welcome to the November session of the ChicagoLand SharePoint users group. We're going to cover the following agenda. We're going to talk about recent news from around the SharePoint ecosystem, and there's some interesting things to talk about. Upcoming events to keep things on your radar. Again, there's a few things that we can mention. We always are going to talk about some big picture stuff to help people understand where SharePoint fits in their organization and what its capabilities are and how to start getting the most out of those capabilities. That will always be a standard part of our session. Then we'll jump into the fun part of each session, the cool new stuff that you want to know about. And today is actually going to be talking about PowerApps and even building PowerApps. Lastly, as time permits for everybody's schedule, is BYOP, Bring Your Own Problem, where through chat and possibly opening up the microphones, we'll allow people to talk about challenges that they're facing recently that could potentially be solved with SharePoint. And we'll all noodle things together and see what we can come up with. Proceeding on to the next slide. Recent news from around the SharePoint ecosystem. There's a SharePoint 2016 November update that's available. The URL is provided there. This slide deck will be made available on the Meetup site after the session. It'll also be available on our MTech website as well to download. The coolest stuff, Office 365, more correctly, Microsoft PowerApps and Microsoft Flow are now generally available. These are 2 cool new products that started off in April, May, June, July in kind of a preview mode, getting the polish put on them. As of November 3rd, they're now available, and it's exciting. We're out of trial mode. You can get into PowerApps.com, you can get into Flow.Microsoft.com, and get into 2 different portals and begin experimenting with these 2 tools. Next item, SharePoint 2016 now actually has a certification for administration. It's called Exam 70-339. And by clicking on the link that we provided, you can learn about that certification and even where there are leads on how you can go and get training materials to begin preparing for that very, very interesting, very, very important certification. Next on the list, Microsoft, for whatever reason, has decided that it needed to create yet another completely internal to Microsoft, homegrown chat mechanism. They call it Teams, and it is going to compete directly with its own Yammer, along with it's going to be competing with Slack, competing against Slack, Chatter, and other technologies. This space is exploding, everybody, and even Microsoft and therefore SharePoint want to get in on a piece of this. That, as we all know, collaboration includes communication in a social, in a group setting, so that this tool dovetails very nicely inside SharePoint, and we'll continue to watch this and possibly have an upcoming session on this, maybe even in December. Next in the news, Microsoft now has a new SharePoint Android application. You can go into the Google Play Store and download it. It looks like a slightly improved version of the responsive design that's in Office 365, and it is limited only to SharePoint Online. But it does seem to be an improved mobile experience. It's worth you downloading and seeing what that experience is like and giving feedback to Microsoft. Lastly, I've noticed that there's a new on-demand SharePoint developer training site that's out on a place called voitanos.io. And actually the guy looks like he's got some pretty good, interesting stuff. In the past, there's been only a handful of popular websites, that are used for various kinds of video training. This guy is almost a one-man army trying to make very affordable online developer videos, and I highly recommend you give him a try. Using the chat tool, then, does anyone else in attendance, Dan, Jeff, Lisa, Ralph, RC, anyone? Any other news that I may not have mentioned? Stuff that's local, stuff that's regional that has to do with SharePoint. Feel free to chat that out and make sure that you set it to not organizers and panel, but to the entire audience before you actually click on the send button. I'm reading a couple of comments. Looks like Jeff has already been experimenting with Teams. We're going to talk about that later then, Jeff, when we go off the and try to use the audio mode for the webinar. Feel free to continue sharing things. We don't want to leave a lot of dead spot in these videos, so I'll continue on to the next slide. Upcoming events. October, last month, we had IT Dev Connections, the ChicagoLand SharePoint Users Group session, and there was a SharePoint Twin Cities event held in Bloomington, Minnesota, that I heard actually went very, very well. This month, the only thing I know about is this session that was originally held face-to-face on November 9th, and we're doing a repeat performance virtually that you guys are all attending. Upcoming, early in December, we've got SharePoint Fest in Chicago that's growing every single year. More and more people are attending. It's becoming quite exciting. And there's SP Tech for those of you that can't make it to Chicagoland. You can go to San Francisco if you're going to be out there. Let me see that there's a little note here. Oh, just an ongoing chat in the background. That's fine. So that's what's going on the radar for the month of December. It's holiday season. November, December are always going to be a little hard to get in attendance, but that SharePoint Fest, I'm actually looking forward to that. Let's talk a little bit about big picture stuff. The last two sessions, we've always tried to help attendees understand where SharePoint fits. So you've seen this slide. RC, you were in the last session in October. You saw this slide. In any organization, there are anchor technologies. Those anchor technologies, those pillar technologies are related to individual processes, group processes, and enterprise processes. That for each of those types, there's a specific set of productivity tools that are actually used to basically to be productive in that area. SharePoint is an anchor technology. It's not something that you should, in your organization, be trying to win people over any more than you were trying to win them over to Microsoft Word or Microsoft Outlook for email and for preparing documents. So you need to think about specifying it. Specifically, where SharePoint fits is under that facet of group productivity tools. That's where SharePoint really shines, is when people are working together, not quite at the enterprise level across the whole organization, not at the individual level, but that little niche that's in between. There's a lot of times we break into groups and we collaborate, and that's where SharePoint needs to be. Once you understand what those group processes are in your organization, SharePoint actually starts to become the ideal tool for empowering people to interact in those areas. Another big picture topic is SharePoint's capabilities, not just where it fits, but what it's capable of actually doing. There's a concept of empowering technologies. Anything that actually empowers people to do something that they've already been doing. It improves things. It enhances things. It doesn't help you do it in the first place. Chances are you're already doing it. This is supposed to empower you to do it even better. Better, faster, cheaper, more efficiently, etc. If you take a step back and look at collaboration in any organization, it tends to break up maturity-wise into 4 different levels. The most rudimentary is the communicating level. If you're communicating, you've already begun collaborating inside your organization. once you start sharing files, sharing documents, etc., using any kind of tool, you're at that second stage of collaboration maturity. SharePoint in either of these two is going to be competing with some already established tools like email, like file servers. But the moment you actually start stepping out of that level of collaboration and into the world of tasking, actually assigning people tasks and tracking those tasks, or tracking all kinds of information related to a collaborative effort, risks, issues, assignments, events, documents, statuses, defects, any kind of problems, questions, suddenly all of the previous earlier tools like email and file servers, even simplistic websites, basically fall second place, a distant second to SharePoint, and it really begins to shine. So if you can begin to understand your organization's collaboration maturity, what level it's at, are you at level 2, are you at level 3 finally, and level 4, you start to see where SharePoint will rise head and shoulders above any other technology that you have available to you, even the CRM technologies. So once you understand where you're at, you'll begin to understand how best to leverage your SharePoint environment, on-premise or on cloud, to take your organization, your teams up to the very next level. Cool and new stuff. This is what everybody was waiting for today. We're going to talk about SharePoint PowerApps and Flow in 5 slides and in hopefully less than 60 minutes. If you had to describe PowerApps to somebody and you had only a few seconds, you would say, think SharePoint Designer for mobile apps and workflow. You would think a browser-based IDE, an integrated development environment for actually building mobile apps. You would think RAD, rapid application development for SharePoint apps, and even for other data sources, other line of business systems. SharePoint's just one of them. This is actually Microsoft PowerApps. It's not SharePoint PowerApps. It's not limited in that sense. So that finishes off this particular slide. Let's go dive into a specific slide deck just for PowerApps. Okay, this is going to be Microsoft PowerApps and Microsoft Flow, as much as we can cram into a handful of slides. I always try to make it 5. It never works. What we're going to try to cover is the 5 W's and the H, the who, what, why, when, where, and how, to get you through the basics if you've already been hearing about it. I'd like to see people chatting in, and let me know if anyone has already started experimenting with PowerApps or with Microsoft Flow since the preview came out in April, May of this month. I'll keep watching the chat thread down below here, but let me know if you guys have started working in this area at all. For those of you that haven't, the first question you're going to ask is, who is PowerApps? Who is Microsoft PowerApps? It's a new Office 365 delivered service for building our RAD-style mobile apps in a nutshell. Think browser-based SharePoint Designer, think browser-based IDE for mobile apps, think browser-based IDE for RAD mobile apps. Who built PowerApps? Microsoft's Office 365 team, working in conjunction with the Dynamics 365, so the CRM team. This product actually had its genesis in CRM, in Microsoft Dynamics CRM in 365. And it expanded out once people understood how well it was architected to integrate with other line of business systems inside Microsoft and even outside Microsoft. By outside, I mean Box.com, Dropbox.com, Salesforce, a whole host of probably 20 or 30 different connectors you can get into to start writing mobile apps that touch data sources that exist inside Microsoft and outside Microsoft. It is very cool. It's also very, very much version 1.0.0.0. So there are still things they're trying to work out, but it's enough that people can start using it. Who is PowerApps for? It's really targeted at Office 365 developers and, more importantly, power users inside any organization. On the flip side, who's Microsoft Flow? It's another Office 365 delivered service, but this is adding workflow-like behaviors to SharePoint lists and a whole lot of other stuff. I mean, you can trigger stuff to happen when events go on in OneDrive, in Box.com, in Dropbox.com, in Salesforce. Again, in another 20 plus different line of business systems, you can start building your own custom little agents to react to events that are happening. not just in SharePoint, but into all of these other line of business systems. And the end result is that you achieve a level of productivity as if you had your own personal assistant walking alongside you, keeping track of things that are going on in your day-to-day business life so that no balls get dropped, would be a nice way to put it. Think browser-based IDE for event handlers on lists, on email, on OneDrive, on Dropbox, on Box. Who built PowerApps? Once again, the Office 365 product team working in conjunction with Dynamics CRM, the 365 Dynamics technology. RC has not done anything with PowerApps yet, but you're going to, RC. You're going to love this. Elizabeth, feel free to send a poll out. I would love to have you leverage the polling capabilities of the GoToWebinar, and let's have everybody answer a poll in the background. Meanwhile, I'll proceed here. What's the big picture is going to be what you all ask. What's the big picture? What can you do with PowerApps and with Flow? My answer, when I was looking at this for the last couple of months, power users who previously could only build complex lists but then got stuck when it came to actually coding and getting that list and turning it into more like an application that responded to events that had other capabilities, that's what was missing. That's what PowerApps and Flow now bring into SharePoint land. So that, in my mind, PowerApps and Flow working together can now empower the power users, that tier of developers or would-be fledgling developers, to create actual application developed solutions that have mobile and integration capabilities, where they previously were only able to build lists that got more and more complex, and if there's functionality they had to do it in Microsoft Access or even in Microsoft Excel. Now they can actually do it in a mobile setting. So the analogy at the bottom of this slide is that Excel empowers power users to actually build, let me fix that right way, to build reports and dashboards. Where the power users use PowerApps, they can now build integrated mobile apps, and with Flow they can actually make those mobile apps even event savvy. So you're building very sophisticated mobile apps that solve lots of little point problems, and then you can deliver those apps quite quickly to the end users that have been clamoring for them. This is very, very cool. I think I have a duplicated slide there. Another way of putting it into context is this. I perceive that PowerApps and Flow are part of Microsoft's continuous vision for empowering that middle tier of users, the power users in every organization. Why do I say that? If we look at this pyramid that represents pretty much every organization you can think of, the developers are always wildly outnumbered by the end users themselves. As a result, when the users are clamoring for various kinds of business solutions, it's a 100-to-1 ratio. You've got 100 users clamoring and asking one developer to try to come up with a solution. The developers can never get it all done. But just underneath that developer is a green tier of power users in an organization that are sharp. They've got business savvy and they've got some technical prowess, but they need the tools that actually fit their capabilities. So you cannot hand them Visual Studio. They won't be able to start kicking out solutions. You don't even want them to. The same people that can create amazing things with InfoPath and amazing things with SharePoint Designer, amazing solutions with Microsoft Excel for that matter. That's the target audience that Microsoft is pointing PowerApps and Flow to. Those are the people that, if you give them this kind of a tool, they will begin to fashion solid solutions. Which begs the question, where do the developers and where does a company like MTech fit? We fit in that little tier just above the power users. We want to supplement and complement the developers themselves, and the developers actually want to supplement and complement the workings of the power users in an organization. The end result is that that upper triangle that's made up of developers and MTech and the power users now end up with about a 1-to-4 ratio of development capabilities to end users, which means that now that organization has the ability to actually address all of the requests for business solutions that the user base has been demanding of them up until this point, but they haven't been able to actually achieve because they didn't have the tools. So here it is, PowerApps and Microsoft Flow end up being yet another duo of tools that Microsoft uses to help those power users address the needs of the users in a powerful, efficient, but also a controllable and a governable manner. So you don't turn your power users into a rogue IT. Instead, they become an enhancement to IT, something that the developers actually embrace. And we love to be right smack in the middle trying to help out with that. Another way to view that big picture is Microsoft is really trying to figure out a way to take tools like Power BI, PowerApps, and Microsoft Flow and actually use that to tie into all of your line of business systems in a way that there's no duplication of the data. There's no duplication of the functionality. Instead, you end up with the ability to measure, to act, and to automate all of your business processes, but you're placing that capability in the hands of the power users, the people that actually have the business savvy that the developers themselves may actually not possess. That's what Microsoft's striving for in all of this. Now we're getting close to the fun part. When is this technology going to be usable? Actually, it's right now. And in fact, PowerApps and Microsoft Flow are available for free for organizations that have an Office 365 E1, E2, and E3 subscription already. You can simply, it can eventually appear as yet another tile in the Office 365 apps launcher. You'll see some notes down here that you can also add some additional capabilities for $7 per person per month and some development capabilities for $40 per person per month. But that would only be for the developers in your organization, not all of the users. So you get some additional development-related functionality for creating these solutions, deploying and managing these solutions for $40 per person per month. You might have only 2 or 3 developers in your entire organization whose Office 365 cost would go up by that amount, and it would be worth every single penny of it. Next slide. Time for a test drive. Excuse me. What we're going to do is actually go into a Power Portal, and what I invite each of you to do, how many people actually brought their browsers with or are ready to actually build a Power App today? Let me know. Just reply really quick. And that's not really a poll. Just I want to see everybody chat back in, or Elizabeth, if it's possible, can you turn the mute off and have everybody just holler in whether or not they've got their laptops? Let's have everybody just use the chat tool. We're getting used to this, gang, and the fact that everybody attended today tells me I think we're on the right track. So we're just going to try to perfect this. Chat in and let me know if you guys have actually brought your laptops. Lisa doesn't have Office 365. Jeff has it on his laptop. Fantastic. Anybody that does have a laptop, here's what I want you to do. You're going to go to a new browser tab, and you're going to go to web.powerapps.com. That's the URL for the PowerApps portal. You are either going to see the PowerApps portal show up, or you're going to see a dialog box that says start the free trial. Hey, click this start the free trial and follow along. I'm going to wait about 30 seconds for anyone that is starting that free trial, just so that they don't get completely lost as I proceed. We're going to build 2 different kinds of apps today, gang. One is going to use the absolutely most streamlined tool where we literally just have to point to a SharePoint list and wham, bang. PowerApps is actually going to generate an entire application that allows you to add, change, or delete any item inside that SharePoint list and end up transforming it into a mobile app, either for a mobile phone or for a tablet. And it's done. We'll be done in under 1 minute. Then we're going to go back and try recreating that very same application a little bit more slowly. We're going to gradually build it up manually, step by step, so that you can start to see the sort of processes that are available, or the processes that need to be followed, the capabilities that are available in this web-based application development environment. And this is the cool part. This is what I really wanted to spend time with you guys on in today's webinar, is to get people started so that even by the next session in early December, everybody's already going to have questions about, hey, I was working on PowerApps and I got stuck here, or I got working on Flow and I got stuck here. We're going to try to get over those kinds of headaches. So I'm going to wait about 10 more seconds. And then we're going to proceed. Looks like Jeff got it, so I'm going to take that as a good sign that we can proceed. What you're looking at here is the standard PowerApps portal. If I go up into the upper right, upper left-hand corner, that is the Office 365 app launcher. And when I click on it, you'll actually see that there is no tile here for Office 365. But if I go into our own Office 365 environment, and this is a guinea pig website that I set up, it's a mock corporate portal, and we're going to try to build an application that lets me directly edit this particular list. I can either read from it or I can actually write to it in order to be able to post things that are going on inside the organization. In MTech's Office 365 environment, when we click here, we actually do see that PowerApps is a tile that shows up on the app launcher. Flow shows up the same way. Microsoft is experiencing a little bit of difficulty on some of its Office 365 tenants so that these tiles do not automatically appear. They're working on it. We happen to be one of those people that it didn't show up immediately, and the next time we have a session, you'll see Flow show up there as well as PowerApps. When I click on PowerApps, that's when you see this overall interface. The Home tab shows me the recent apps that I've been working on, just me. It also gives you some wizards about getting started, videos on how to create an app directly from various kinds of data, creating an app directly from SharePoint, and by from data I mean literally Azure hosted databases. Meow, this is way cool stuff. And also sharing an app with various people in your organization. On top of that, this section allows you to get into what's called the Common Data Service and Microsoft's Common Data Model. We're going to have to talk about that in another session. Suffice to say that if you create an Azure-based SQL database that represents everything in your organization, then PowerApps can actually tap into that and create a number of different one or more mobile apps that allow you to interact with that massive data model. SharePoint's just one of the things that we can do. Last but not least, in the PowerApps interface are a ton of sample applications that you can actually not just test ride, but you can use them like templates. The same way you have a template in Microsoft PowerPoint, you can use these as a template, and you can literally start with that one, configure it a little bit, and immediately get using that application for your organization. That is incredible because there's so many things that are here. There's site management, suggestion box, invoice management, you name it. There's all kinds of information here, or all kinds of sample applications that can be instantiated, configured a little bit, and immediately used by your organization to allow you to build mobile applications very, very swiftly. So what we're going to do is actually get started here where we want to create an application from SharePoint. I could either click on this Get Started button, or I'll use the New app in the lower left-hand corner, and that's what I would recommend. So Jeff and anyone else that has PowerApps open, let's go and click on New App. The first thing that you're going to see is it asking, do you want to install or create your application using PowerApps for Windows? That's just a little itty-bitty micro browser so that launches this application. I would say for now, leave that one alone. Instead, just go ahead and click on Power Studio for Web, and what you'll see is that a new tab is going to show up in your browser. Here's the new tab that's opening up the PowerApps, not the PowerApps portal, but the PowerApps Studio, ready to start building your very first application. All I have to do is look across here and decide which data source do I want to tie into. And in this case, I want to do SharePoint, and I'll start with a phone layout. It takes seconds to switch it over to a tablet layout. We'll start with a phone layout to begin with. By clicking on a phone layout, all it asks for is what's the URL to the actual SharePoint site that you need to go and get into. And you can see I've been building applications for a lot of different customers, including ourselves. What I want to do is get the URL for this particular website. So I'm going to go up and grab Share Integrate, copy it. I'm going to take it back into the App Studio, and I'm going to paste it right in here. Now, if I hit go on here, it's going to go and actually grab every list that's available on that website and ask me which one it is that I want to interface with. Since I was looking at news items, I'm going to go back here and choose news items. And in the bottom right-hand corner here, it says connect. That's all that's required for PowerApps to actually begin generating my very first mobile application that lets me have total CRUD operations, add, change, and delete operations into that list right from my mobile phone. And I'll even get to test ride that mobile phone in a website, in my laptop, in this particular browser. And what we see is that a very common PowerApps application is going to consist of 2 or 3 screens. There's always going to be some kind of a gallery screen that shows all of the items in the list along with search capabilities and scrolling capabilities. There's going to be some kind of a detail list where you get to see it, but it's in view mode. And then there's going to be that very same form, but it goes into edit mode. Those are the 3 most common components that are going to exist when you're trying to get into any kind of SharePoint list or even any kind of a SQL data table for that matter. There's going to be a gallery view, there's going to be a detail view, and there's going to be a detail edit page screen. This is actually a completely functioning application at this point, and if I want to test ride it, all I have to do is hit the play button up in the corner here. The minute I hit it, it starts actually running this application in a standard browser. This would also exist in my mobile application as well and would look exactly the same. I can see all these different fields that have been exposed from this list, and by clicking on the detail page, I can actually see all of the individual details. By clicking on the back, it takes me back into the list. By clicking on company-wide call, it shows here. If I want to edit it, now it goes into the edit page. And I can actually change this now and say Mark Edward Vote at the end. I can click update, and now this is saving that update back to the SharePoint list. So everybody that's used to seeing this now will understand that it says company-wide call MEV here. Let's go back into the SharePoint list. Let's do a refresh on this entire web page that contains this list. And where it used to say company-wide call, now it's actually saying company-wide call MEV. So what I've ended up doing is literally creating an application in seconds that enables me to actually edit that particular list. Now, is there a little work to do? Yeah. I've got to select these fields, and I've got to go and change it so that it's not rendering or displaying the HTML, the div tag that's in there. But you can see the basics is already available to me. The next thing I would want to do with this application is share it with people inside my organization. If I go back to the File tab, I can give a name to this application, and I'm going to call it the Mark Vote. No, I'm going to call it the MTech, the Mock MTech Corporate News Power App. Hopefully everybody can still hear me. I just got muted and unmuted for a moment. Losing attentiveness. Okay, we're doing pretty good so far. Since MTech has corporate colors that are red, I'm going to use that. And since it's company news, I'm going to pick a different icon. I guess that'll work. There's going to be my icon. There's going to be my app name. If I go and click on save, it's going to save it into my PowerApps portal. And once that's done, oops, got to hit save down in the bottom right corner. I always miss that. Jeff, let me know if you're following along and doing something similar with your own. If I go back into, I can actually close this studio out now. I've saved that document, and if I go back into my PowerApps portal tab, where this all began, and actually click on the Apps tab, it's going to show me a list of all the applications that I've created. And where did my... Sometimes it takes a moment or two to show up. There we go. Mock MTech Corporate News Power App is all listed here. I have the ability now to share this application with either my entire organization or with select people. I'm going to only share in this demo with select people. So over on the ellipsis on the far right, I'm going to choose the share menu item that takes me into the share page that allows me to decide using nothing as just intuitive like email addresses. I'm going to share this with Chris.Barton, and I guess it's Christopher. There he is. I can share this with Christopher Barton, and he's going to be made a user as opposed to another contributor or even an owner. So I can limit how people actually consume my applications. I can invite them to be additional developers, the contributors, or I can invite them to merely be an end user for this particular application. This is going to send an email message out to Chris so that Chris now has a link. I would love to send it out to other people outside the organization, but they're still working on that functionality. Right now, this is meant to create mobile apps that are for use inside your individual organizations. So I sent it only off to Chris Barton. Chris Barton's going to see a link. When he clicks on the link, either via his phone in Outlook or through his laptop and looking at his email that way, he'll be taken to that Power App, and the Power App actually will launch either in his browser or in his phone. So we've covered SharePoint lists and creating a mobile app that tied into it. We've created the app. We've shared the app. The only thing that we need to do next is how do we actually consume that app from a phone? And what you need to do, Jeff, I want you to use the chat tool and text back to me. Tell me what kind of a phone that you have. He passes the URL to the list he wants. It says we couldn't access the data as anyone in that issue. Jeff, when you are passing the URL, are you going, don't go to the list, only go to the website. That's the URL that they're asking for. Once you supply only the URL to the website, then PowerApps is going to query the website to get an inventory of all of the lists, and then you'll select that list that you want to interact with. Try that and let me know if that's working for you. Is there anybody else that actually has questions? I'm clicking on, I'm looking to see, I don't see anyone else asking any questions. But what I want people to do next is this. You are going to browse, and it depends on the store, you're going to browse to your phone's store. You are going to download and install PowerApps mobile app. You're going to launch that mobile app, the PowerApps mobile app. You're going to log in to your Office 365 environment, and you will end up seeing the applications that are available to you there. So Microsoft looked ahead and they saw that it's going to be very easy for people to start creating not 1 or 2 or 5 or 10, but creating possibly dozens, even dozens and dozens of applications inside a single organization, which means you could potentially have dozens and dozens and dozens of individual icons on your mobile phone or on your tablet if they decided they were going to follow that traditional model. Instead, what Microsoft did was look ahead and say, lots of phones are creating operating systems that allow you to group applications together. So what it's doing is making available the PowerApps application that acts as sort of a launcher, acts as sort of a client to get in and launch all of the other apps that have been created in PowerApps. So now you only have one icon, one application that you launch on your phone. You use it just like with Outlook or anything else to log into Office 365. You immediately see a list, excuse me, you immediately see a list of all of the apps that you have access to. You click on the one that you want to launch, just like I would click on this one here, and it would immediately start. So that's a much more preferable user case or user story, is to have one app that you launch, one button that you click on your phone, it instantly logs in, then you click on the application that you want right there, it launches, and then with a swipe to from the left to the right on your phone, you close that application. It ends up being a very, very easy, very intuitive user experience. How many other people besides Jeff have actually tried to build an application so far? I see Jim Brown, got everything, RC, seeing issues, Jeff. Are you guys actually only using the URL, not to the list you want, but to the website? Again, if I went back to this website, if this is the list I was trying to get in, when you first feed SharePoint, or PowerApps rather, the URL, it's only the URL up to the website that you're trying to get into. No further than that. I'm hearing voices. Feel free to talk. And I'm not hearing voices anymore. Okay, we're making it through. Not to leave any more dead spot, while you guys are tinkering a little bit with that application, let me step you through a more manual process of creating an application as well. If I close this particular PowerApps Studio, pointed at this particular PowerApps app, and I go back to my PowerApps portal, I can go and start a new application in a PowerApps Studio. I see it's 12:15. We have about 15 minutes left. That gives us 10 minutes to build an app and 5 minutes to talk about it or discuss where do you go with something like this. Why is it important? Instead of clicking on SharePoint directly, what I'm actually going to do is click on a tablet layout for a blank application. A blank application gives you a single screen. That's a perfectly good starting point. It doesn't give you anything in here. I didn't want to create a tab. What I want to do first with this is actually create some kind of an initial layout. There's a series of templates that are available. Simply by clicking on it, the simplest one, I end up with a very nice screen that's got a title. If I click on the title control on this screen, I actually can literally change the title of my application right up here by saying this is Mark's sample tablet SharePoint Power App. Pretty cool. Maybe that's a little bit long. We're going to shorten that so that it shows up in the list a lot easier. So here's a tablet SharePoint Power App, and I'll even simplify it more. It's going to be tablet MTech corporate news. What do I want to do with this? I'm going to add a control on here that actually lets me access a particular data source. So if we go across the tabs that are available in PowerApps, we see that we've got the Home tab. That's going to allow us to do some basic editing on each kind of control that's on our user interface, on our screens. So you're going to be able to control the color of the text, the font, etc. Under the Insert tab, you can add new screens to your application. You can add a text box to a given screen, a button, some additional text like a label, various kinds of controls, buttons, drop-down lists, and then you can wire them up to parts of your SharePoint list. There's a gallery that allows you to literally, very elegantly, simply bind right to a list and immediately start displaying it out. You don't have to do anything else. It's so cool. We'll show you in a second. There's various kinds of forms. The display form and the edit form literally auto-create themselves. You can add different kinds of media onto each of your screens. There's charts that can be added on, and there's icons that you'll use for doing various kinds of actions and navigation. We'll use quite a number of these in the next few minutes. So we've already got an initial title on here. The next thing I want to do with this screen is get some kind of a detail of that initial SharePoint list. So I'm going to go and add a gallery. The gallery that I'm going to add doesn't have any images or things like that in there. It's going to be in the text gallery. It's going to be just a vertical list. So I click on that, and I automatically get a sample gallery. It's populated with mock data that's coming from a source called Textual Gallery Sample. But if I click on this little data source here, it allows me to actually add a new data source. Inside PowerApps, I've already added a data source under the File menu that was called SharePoint. So if I simply select that data source here, then it says, okay, give me a URL. Once again, I'm actually going to paste all the way up to Share Integrate and say, go inside Share Integrate. From that data source, I can then go inside and pick the particular news items that I really want to bind to this particular gallery control. And by hitting Connect, it's going to swap out all the mock data. It's going to go and get the real data, and it's actually going to populate this list with that real data. Now, it's going to take a stab at what I think I want to see inside there, that if I click on the very first record in this display, there's 3 different fields that are being displayed. The top one that says SharePoint Conference, it looks like it's bound to the field in the list, the column called Title. That's exactly what I wanted to do. So far, so good. The second field that's up here, the second control or text box, is also bound to the title field. Not so good. Let's go down here and actually say that I want to bind that one to the expires, so that now it's actually going to be a date field. That was pretty easy. And the last one, it's actually tied to the body of this particular news item. I like that. That works just fine. We can actually test this application at this point. So let's do a quick save, where I'm going to actually save this application as Mock Tablet Corp News. So I've at least saved it. It's going to save it into PowerApps, and then we're going to run this little thing. Here we are. It takes me automatically back to my design space, to my studio, where if I go into the upper right-hand corner, I actually automatically start running the tablet version, and I can actually scroll down and see every single item in that list. I can see the 3 fields that it actually showed me. Now, there's nothing up here that I can click on to take me to a detail page or a back page. Let's go see how we would do that. The first thing I need is a detail page to actually go to. Let me scroll down and see there's a couple other notes coming in. Okay, if you guys, it sounds like everybody's unmuted, so if you do want to talk, Dan, Jeff, Greg, feel free. It looks like RC as well. You're off mute. Go to the questions page. Looks like we're getting some really good response here. I apologize, everybody, that I'm looking in one window and talking, not looking at the questions here. A few minutes, wonderful, let us know when you're any time. All right, it looks like at least most people are covered. I'm going to continue, just for the sake of brevity, with trying to add a little bit more functionality to get you guys started so that when you leave the session today, there's more things that you can actually do. What we want to do next is add the next detail screen that you would go to if you actually wanted to see a detail of, say, the word SharePoint Conference or the company-wide call. We're going to do that by actually going up to Insert. We're going to add a new screen. Voila, on the left-hand side is our new screen. I'm going to add the same kind of a basic layout here. I'll click on the title bar. We'll change this to Tablet Corporate News Detail. Pretty basic. And what this is going to end up wanting to do is get information from whatever you've selected on this one. We need a button on this one to get there then. But we need that button to be repeated so that on each of these particular items. So if I go into the very first record of this, this gallery, this is where I actually get to add a particular icon, one that's going to be repeated again and again and again for each of the records. So what I want to do is go to Insert. I want to add an icon, and I need to find an icon that's going to be representative of going to a detail page. The most common one is probably the next arrow. I'll select it from the drop-down list. It's going to generate one. I'm going to put it way over on the side here, and you'll notice it immediately got replicated down. So what I'm doing with the first record, PowerApps understands I'm going to be replicating across all of the other records no matter where I click on them. So if I resize it here, I'm going to resize it everywhere else. I'll position it a little bit so it's right. I guess that's a pretty good spot here. And now I want to wire it up. I want to tell it to do something. What do I want to tell it to do? I'll go to the Action tab, and instead of saying on select, I want to choose Navigate. Now I want to navigate to screen number 2, and I can even select where I want to, what kind of transition I want to have. I'm going to act like it's doing an uncover, so it's kind of a swipe looking sort of animation. And what I've done right now then is actually create functionality that will take me from the gallery page to a specific detail screen. What I need to do next is get back from the detail screen back into the gallery screen. So let's do something similar. I'm going to insert an icon. This one's going to be a back arrow. Since it's a detail page, there's only going to be one of these. It's going to be in the upper left-hand corner. And what I want to do with this one is action, navigate, back to screen 1. And I'm going to use not an uncover, but an uncover transition. Let's go do a quick save on this to save our work. And then we're going to test it really quick. Back inside here, I'll start at the detail page, and I'm going to hit the play button. Let's see what we've got. We have an application that tied into that SharePoint list. It's completely scrollable right from the get-go. And if I go to company-wide MEV and actually click the detail button, then it actually takes me to this page with a back button that when I click on it, takes me back to the gallery page. What's next? Next, we actually have to show that detail page. So let's go and look and see how that's actually done. If I go to the detail page here, what I'm going to need is to actually insert a particular kind of form called a display form. That display form, once I insert it and position it correctly, needs to be connected up to the data. One, it needs to be connected up to the data source, and once you're in that data source, you need to tell that which record you're actually looking at. Let's go see how that's done. The data source that I select is going to be MTech News Item. So far, so good. In fact, I'm actually going to wire it up and say I want to show the title, followed by the author, followed by the body, followed by the when it expires. I'd say that's a pretty good start. But where am I going to get this data? Which particular record am I talking about? Right now, it's just aimed at the whole table. I need to go to the Advanced tab, and on the Advanced tab, I'll actually see a list. Let's see, I have to click directly on this record. Give me a second here. MTech News Items. My data card. There's a field that I'm looking for here inside here that actually is the individual item. And sometimes you have to be selecting just the right control on the screen to make that item field appear. There it is. I had to pick the actual form viewer control. It's bound to the data source called item. And here is the only unintuitive thing you're going to stumble on in this incarnation of PowerApps. We have to start typing and know what command we need to go look here. Under item, I'm going to go into the gallery 1, because that was actually the name of the original control on the gallery page. And if I hit the dot, then IntelliSense is going to give me a bunch of choices. Where in the gallery? It's the thing I selected. That's what I actually want. And you'll see it immediately came and populated in real time. So what I ended up with is the ability to actually create that detail page. Let's go save this and then test it. I suspect that this is going to get better. As PowerApps becomes more sophisticated, even in the next month or two, you're not going to need to type and know what those commands actually look like, those methods that you're invoking. Let me hit save on this really quick. And now that we've saved it, let's go back and test this. We built an application from scratch. We built it as a tablet. We made 2 different screens. We created a detail screen and we created a gallery screen. Now when we go run it, we get our gallery screen, and when we go to SharePoint Conference, we actually get to see the details for that one particular record on a detail page with the ability to go back. And if I click on a different one, Win at the Salvation Army, then I get to go back. You can see how then, let me close this application. We're coming up on only 2 minutes left. You can see that PowerApps gives the ability for power users. You don't have to be a complete developer to get the hang of how this all works. And there's so many different applications, even starter applications that are available to you. All of these different templates that are available, that Microsoft is trying to make it easy for people to actually wet their feet and begin developing all different kinds of applications to see where this all goes. We didn't get a chance to do BYOB. We didn't get a chance to do Microsoft Flow today. I was kind of expecting that, but I'm terribly pleased that people were able to open their laptops up and actually get into PowerApps, get into the portal, and start tinkering around with making applications. In the remaining 2 minutes that we've got, are there any other questions that people want to try to ask in this particular user session? The floor is everybody's. And is there anything that, tell me if there's things that you liked about going with a virtual session versus face-to-face sessions. We're trying to get some feedback here.
It's terribly convenient, that much is sure.
And who is that? Is that Jeff?
This is RC, sorry.
RC, hey RC. All right, so we're heading in the right direction. We certainly had people show up today that haven't showed up before. What about Dan, Greg, Jeff, Lisa? Lisa, you seem to be on mute, or you're just on the video, but not the audio.
Yeah, this is Jeff. This was great. I mean, as much as I love to see everybody face to face, it would be great to do that, but this is just so much more convenient, gotta say.
Okay. RC, where are you at? You're downtown, right?
I'm on the north side of Chicago.
North side of Chicago. Jeff, how about you?
I'm in the northwest suburbs, Arlington Heights.
Fantastic. So now we're getting into those people. I had set out a survey via Meetup a couple of weeks ago that about 10 people replied to, and what we struggled with was that we got lots of responses, but everybody said, yeah, we need one in Libertyville, we need one in Arlington Heights, we need one in Schaumburg, by the way, we need one in Oak Brook, and yeah, can we have another face-to-face session in Naperville in addition to downtown? And suddenly you start to realize, hey, we got kind of a challenge going on. We've got 6 new members joining this group every single month, you guys, and yet the membership on the face-to-face, the attendance on the face-to-face has been kind of stagnant. So we were expecting that this would actually have a positive impact. What we'd like to see for you guys is that if we had this kind of a format, we could easily have bi-monthly, meaning twice a month sessions if we thought it made sense to do so. What do you guys that are attending right now think? Would you be willing to do 2 one-hour sessions a month if it was happening over lunch hour, or is there a better time that you would actually prefer to see this happening?
Yeah, twice a month would be great, and my schedule is pretty flexible, so various times of the day work for me.
Yeah, it certainly helps to do the lunch and learns. What we're envisioning is that people literally grab a brown bag, sit in a conference room, pull up a shared projector somewhere, and participate on a speakerphone, something like that. Although somebody's saying, yeah, we need to go to Cooper's Hawk. Okay. Jeff, you got it. You got to try their rhubarb wine. Absolutely fantastic.
I'll do that next lunch meeting. I'll be at Cooper's Hawk drinking wine. We'll see how that goes.
Sounds perfect. Up in Hoffman Estates there?
Yeah.
Yep, I know exactly the one you're talking about. Great people. You guys, thanks very much for participating today. I hope that you found today's cram everything into 25-minute presentation useful. We're going to put the video and the PowerPoint slide presentations up. I think this is going to be the topics of some upcoming ones as well. We're just getting started in what can be done with PowerApps. I think we're going to be digging deeper and deeper over even the next 3 or 4 sessions, which if we go twice monthly is going to cover the month of December and the month of January. So watch for the Meetup site for upcoming dates for the next sessions and the follow-ups, and by all means feel free to use Meetup to engage us and say if there's anything you want us to try to cover in those sessions. I have no trouble making stuff up on my own, but I would love to get some feedback and let this users group really start to meet the needs of the individual users. In other words, try to solve problems that you guys are experiencing right here, right now, in your workplaces. That said, it's 12:33. Thanks for showing up. Watch for the meetup site for everything to get digested and pushed up there. Keep your PowerApps going and watch for the next meetup. Hopefully it's going to be also in the month of November, and then we'll schedule 2 more in December, okay?
All right, thank you,
Sounds
Mark.
great. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.